Hey everybody, this is Mike. Today is November 17th, 2020, and welcome back. Thank you for joining me. Today's going to be a fun one. I'm excited about this. If you've followed the last couple videos that I've made, I've been showing this felt map I'm making of the Susquehanna River. And, I do this in my life, and, this is true for anyone else, but like, particularly when you are involved with some type of creative pursuit, you're tapping in on a deeper level and expect to see that spill out in other places. So, this is going to be about the Susquehanna River. And even more so, we're going to go into a really, really, really weird spot on it. And it's going to be a little bit of a change from the last couple of videos I've made, which have been a little bit political, a little bit like, more along that type of storyline of reality. And I want to go to something a little bit more tangible. A river's more tangible, rocks are more tangible. But it's going to be it's going to be weird. Let me show you where I'm coming along with the map. I basically created the entire backdrop. If you could look behind me, there was a time I used to make a lot of collage work. That's what all of these things are. And so the first thing you do is you create like the backdrop and then you add on the details. So this is basically the same thing. It's collage with felt. And I've never done this before. It's kind of fun. It's easier. It's less messy than the paper stuff, that's for certain. But what will be coming, this isn't done. This is just the backdrop, and then I'll be adding the details. But nonetheless, I think it's looking pretty good. You could see there's the Chesapeake Bay, and that flower-looking thing represents like where a big meteor struck, and you could see the river goes all the way up here. You could see the Finger Lakes. You could see there's the Herkimer diamonds. That black patch is the anthracite. And, I do this for a couple of reasons, but, and again, this is true with anything, like where you put your creative, your mental, your logical energy, you're going to become more intertwined and engaged with that. And, there's going to become a feedback loop, and you're going to start getting information. It may not feel like information. Maybe it does for some people, but, people have asked me before, like, what is this thing with you in the Susquehanna River? I did a regular work project on the Susquehanna River like 6 or 7 years ago, and that's what really unlocked, for me, this deeper connection. But we're going to go into a very, very specific place in the river. If you have a copy of the Rights of the 40th Parallel, we're going to go into the fourth location, which I cover, which is Conewago Falls. It's the integration. It is weird, and we're going to go through some weird stuff. But before we get there, I want to go into just lay a little bit of context. Just so you know where I'm coming from, particularly if you're a new viewer of with this sort of information. So first and foremost is I approach and recognize that, the human experience, here on Earth is a mystery. The foundation of being human on Earth is mysterious. We don't know, a lot of people like to argue or go into like flat Earth or spherical Earth or anything like that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't even matter, because where the hell is Earth? What is space? Where are we? How did we get here? What are we supposed to do? Again, is it flat? Is it spherical? The point I'm trying to make is not to answer those questions, but to recognize that the foundation of our experience is unknown. It is a mystery. I don't necessarily think that it is I don't think it's the purpose to uncover the mystery, but I think our purpose here is to uncover parts of it, to become more engaged with the mystery of experience. I mean, that's my approach to life. and all of the things which we're seeing in the the false dream world, which I'm always talking about, is like that's a distraction, or maybe it's part of it. I mean, there are ways of looking at it, but that is not what it's about. That's what takes you away from it. The second thing which I want to bring up is the fact that as human beings, we are story beings. The primary level of consciousness of being human is like we've got this, this linear, this logical part of our mind, of our thinking. Sometimes it's called like the left brain, and then we've got this like other side, which is like more emotion based, more subjective. And when you combine those two, like, that's a story. That's what being a human is. That's why we love stories. That's why, like the Bible teaches in parables, and like, we've got like history and like herstory, I guess, and like the stories we tell ourselves. And we are story beings. That's also significant in understanding the human experience. And I consider myself a storyteller, maybe not exactly in the traditional sense, but nonetheless, like, I'm telling stories. And one of the things which I've learned in my time doing so is that, and this is true with being a researcher as well, if you push down, if you apply enough pressure on any story, doesn't matter what that story is. It could be, history, it could be your narrative, it could be like whatever, it's going to start to break down. All stories by nature have weak points, and you press down and you start questioning. You're like, well, what about this? Or what about that? And you start looking at it from other perspectives. You're going to see it's going to break. And if you do that enough, you're going to break stories down into pieces where you can't break any further. And then if you are creative enough, if you are clever enough, if you're logical enough, like all of these different parts of like, our deductive part of our mind, we can rearrange stories which are just as real, if you will, or at least, it makes as much sense as like, a story which you have held before. And here's the thing, like, this isn't just about stories. Like, as I said, we're story beings. When the story changes, we change. And when we change, the outer world changes too. Sometimes in very, very dramatic, drastic ways, and sometimes like not so much, but that's part of the human experience. That's part of our story experience. And this is one of the reasons why like propaganda and like everyone being on the same page and everyone seeing things the same way is so important to construct to the controllers, whoever these controllers may be. And, maybe it's you, maybe it's me, who knows? But it's like, it's because stories matter. And why do they matter? Because they create, they create our experience in this mysterious world. It's one of the reasons why I like to go back to like, the Susquehanna River, why I like to go back to things which you can touch, which you can feel, because they're smaller pieces. When we're looking at deconstructing stories, we want to get to about as small of a piece as we can get. We're like, well, I can't break this down anymore, so now I've got this. Now, where does this and what does this connect to? How can I connect these different pieces, So that is my approach, and let's begin. Where are we going to begin with this? We're going to begin here. Okay. We're going to talk about the Susquehanna River. If you've seen some of the most recent videos, I talked a little bit about the Herkimer diamonds, and I talked about anthracite. I'm going to give a little bit, I'm going to talk about stones again, but I'm going to go to one really, really specific, weird, unexplainable place. And really to push down on, one is the fact that this is like, this is a huge mystery. And then two is to begin to like open the question, like, what are we looking at? So again, like I highly recommend go back and look at a lot of some of the older videos I've done to this river. This river may seem like it's not significant to you. You don't care about rivers, but you're friggin' connected to it. This is the river. This is the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is part of the river. Right here is where the three-wire delivery system of electricity began. This is where the military-industrial complex, where the computer technology, this is where it all began, first computers. This is where this is where globalism began, the British Empire, the United States began here. All of this stuff is energetically tied to this river, and this river, as we see, is like, it's you can't cut a river in half, but to know its exact age, but we definitely know it's like one of a handful of rivers which is estimated to be more than 300 million years old. And when you look at these other ones, this is the most significant in terms of like cultural history. These three are related. Maybe one day I'll get into it. The New, the Susquehanna, and the French Broad. They're all formed around the same time. They're on the eastern seaboard of North America. But, nonetheless, we're talking about physicality with this river, and then a lot of times people ask, like, well, you talk about ley lines. I'm like, not really. I look at it almost more so like, how the human body has like a circulatory system and like a nervous system and a skeletal system, and they all kind of work together and they're integrated. And I'm talking this about a water system, but now we're also going to talk about mineral systems. But there are, that corresponds with the ley line systems. And I took this, this is a snapshot from the work of, this from a book called The Gaia Matrix. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name. I don't want to go and destroy it. It's Peter. It's French sounding, Chopin, maybe, I don't know. But this here, he lays out it's a fantastic book. I recommend everyone, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, like to read it. But he's talking about these ley lines and particularly how they played out into the unfolding of the United States, which then played out into the what's been going on Earth. And this book, I think, came out in like the 1990s, like pre 9/11, which is a key marker, just like, COVID's going to be a marker. And he indicates this location at Seneca Falls as being very, very significant. Which is basically the same, from a ley line perspective, which is basically the same part of the world which I'm talking about. This is where the Susquehanna River begins, right here. This is where he was showing right there on this map. If you follow this line, what he calls the Washington Ley, this right here is actually the Susquehanna River, and you could see like it's just lined right up. In fact, this spot right here, if you could look closely, let me see if I can zoom this in. This is the Susquehanna River. There's Scranton. You can see it bows out, and then it comes back in. This spot right here is exactly where we're going to be talking about today. So we're looking at the same sort of story from another perspective. And what I even have is at 50. Yeah, that looked about right. But okay, so let's begin. Where are we going to begin? Right here, when I showed you that on my map, that explosion, I was talking about this Chesapeake impact crater, which is right here in the Susquehanna River, or in Chesapeake Bay, which is Susquehanna River. Again, I've covered all this stuff lots and lots of times. So let's go. We're going to go on a little tour of the Susquehanna River until we get to our spot. So this is where the Susquehanna River begins. This is Cooperstown, New York. This is Lake Otsego, and at the bottom of the lake right here, we got the town of Cooperstown, and we can see right here, this is the start of the North Branch, the primary branch of the Susquehanna River, and it begins right here. And for those people who know, you like baseball, this is the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is from here to here. How far away are these places? So we got from here to here is 1,125 feet. I've talked about this in other videos. It's really interesting. The only reason this is here is because a major financial contributor to the Theosophical Society, Albert Spalding, said the former president of the Theosophical Society, Abner Doubleday, invented baseball right here. And then a very well-to-do man whose family is behind the many, many esoteric buildings in New York City went and he funded the building of this. And, that's just the beginning of the this connection, this marker of Cooperstown to the proximity of the Susquehanna River. But we see right here, it says Council Rock Park. And let me see if I can get any closer. This right here, I believe this is it. I can't say for certain, but this is Council Rock. So what is Council Rock? Council Rock is this right here. Let me blow this up. Council Rock, Lake Otsego, an ancient Indian rendezvous. This whole area right here, all of this area, this is Iroquois Nation. This is, if you know your United States history, we know that our government is based upon the Iroquois Confederacy. If you're from probably that area, I mean, everyone knows the atrocities which were done to particularly the peoples that were living on the East Coast. But the Iroquois Nation, like this was, or Confederacy, this is where they lived. They were very, very influential and great people. And this is where they met, Council Rock. The Indian population on the upper Susquehanna was centered in small villages. On the foot of Otsego Lake was a favorite resort. They're talking about this Council Rock. In fact, Cooper, what's the guy's name? He was an author, Fenimore Cooper. He wrote a lot about this area, and he was from Cooperstown. Found the origin of the word Otsego, a particular place where meetings were held, being Council Rock. This is where the meetings were held. So the leadership of the Iroquois Nation. So the Iroquois Nation was a what's the word? There's patriarchy, so there's matriarchy. There was a council of grandmothers. They were the ones who really ran the show. There were like men who did all of who met, but behind them were the grandmothers, and they set the stage. So I don't know who met here at Council Rock, if it was the grandmothers or their men, but this was a major meeting of the different groupings of the Iroquois Nation. I'm not an expert of this. I'm kind of tiptoeing because I want to be able to speak as intelligently and as accurately as I can, but by no means am I an expert. Side note here, I'll tell you a real friggin' interesting story. I did a trip out to Ashland, Oregon, and I presented information on this river 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I don't even remember. And I went out there just for the presentation, and as it so happened, right before I was going to go and do this radio show, one block from where I was staying, there was a fundraiser for, if you're familiar with, I think they're called the 13 Grandmothers. There was a fundraiser for the primary grandmother, the leader of that. She was sick, I believe. She recently has passed, but I was like, wow, I'm going to go and this is the synchronicity sort of things which I guide my life by. And I went and I sat there, and at the very least I made eye contact, and to me that felt very much in harmony with what I'm kind of unveiling with the Susquehanna River. It's my opinion that this river goes way further back beyond what we think of the people who lived here prior to the colonization, but nonetheless, the people who lived here prior to the colonization, I want to hold that with as much honor and respect as I can. So, when I saw that, to me, that was like nod, wink, you're on the right direction, or you're going the right way. So nonetheless, let me go back to where I am. So Council Rock, Iroquois Nation, Cooperstown. The beginning of the river was very significant. was very significant to the peoples that lived here. So the beginning of this river, the very beginning, has a connection with human beings and rocks. And what's even more interesting is like Council Rock doesn't really look impressive. Like it's like I've seen it with my own eyes. It's like this little like thing which is popping out over the surface. That's what I'm saying. Like I think this is it. It's not enormous. But nonetheless, like it played a very, very important part. And so my assumption is there was a knowing and understanding that this is greater and deeper than maybe what it looks like. And so that's where we begin with Council Rock. Let's go back to, let's get out of here, continue with our tour, switch back to, let's switch back to the map, and we go down here. Where are we looking for? Right here, I talked about this a little bit last time. You see where it says Susquehanna. This is the Maryland or the New York Pennsylvania border. This spot right here, you see how it comes down. This is Cooperstown, comes down. We're looking at this right now, and I'm going to zoom right in. You can see right there, there's the Susquehanna River, the town called Susquehanna. This is the priesthood restoration site. This is, and I talked about all that, the Church of Latter-day Saints and how this was significant to them. This is the spot. Let's see if we got some photos, if we could see any photos here. That's what it looks like. I've been to it a couple times. It's kind of cool. Real interesting place. I'm not a Mormon. I go there with respect, but if looking at how significant this area is from their lens, to me is really significant to like how I understand my story. Recently, just this week, and maybe I'll get into this, I've been, I was looking again, like if you're familiar with the connection between the Ephrata Cloister and the Rosicrucians and the Susquehanna River, and I've gone through that in like the Mystic Lancaster series, I read this, found really interesting thing about how Joseph Smith, there's often the correspondence between like the Church of Latter-day Saints and a lot of Freemasonic rituals, and it's said that the Freemasons are the ones who like killed Joseph Smith because of his revealing of the Freemasonic rituals. But I read this other thing recently where they're like, well, actually, what if you look at what the rituals were done like in the early days of the Church of Latter-day Saints, they were much more similar to what was happening in the Ephrata Cloister than Freemasonry. But nonetheless, they're all interconnected, and there's some interesting rabbit holes down there, but we're not going to go through that now. But so we got this picture. They rebuilt the house. Here's another house. This is the statue of supposedly, I think it's like Oliver Crowdy maybe, and Joseph Smith, and they were visited by the spirit of John the Baptist, who baptized them in the Susquehanna River, which is right here. And so if you find yourself in the area, you go and see that spot right here, and then there's like a 2-minute walk, and then you can come down to the river, and it's really nice. It's a really cool trip, but you've got that. So let's continue on our path, our tour. We continue on the river. You go past Binghamton, New York, and then you got right here, you've got Endicott, New York. If you're from this part of the world, you probably know that Endicott is the birthplace of IBM. And we also know that the Susquehanna River is the birthplace of ENIAC, which is the first computer. It was located on the first large-scale general-purpose electronic digital computer, ENIAC, like Enoch, John D. I've covered that lots of times. It was delivered to the U.S. Army's Ballistic Research Laboratory in Aberdeen Proving Grounds. This is where Aberdeen is, right here where the river transitions to the Chesapeake Bay. I've covered this lots of times, but we're beginning to see, you know, this really interesting story of like now we've got like IBMs on the same river as well. But let's continue down along there, and I want to go to this place right here. I don't know how to pronounce this. I think it's pronounced Sayre, you know, I don't know, Sayre. But what we find there is Spanish Hill. Spanish Hill is I recommend going to this website, SpanishHill.com, read a little bit about it. You could see it talks about the Susquehannocks, the Tauawan, I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's another name for the Susquehannocks. Susquehannocks are some of the most mysterious people. They're giants. I saw this other video by this guy out in Michigan, and he goes so deep into it, it blew my mind. I don't have his stuff linked up, but the Susquehannocks are really, really significant. These are the people who, one, the river is accredited or named to, but then also, like, you know, the John Smith map. But the Spanish Hill plays into it, and as you could see also, we've got giant skeletons and, you know, all sorts of weird stuff. But we find that, you know, right in this area. Let me go. We see right here is where we find Spanish Hill. Let me drop in here so we can take a look. Let's go right there. So this embankment, this is like Spanish Hill, this thing, you know, it's not really, I think it's on private property right now. So the best thing you could really do is like read about why it's significant. Like a lot of these mound sites, and this isn't a mound, this is, it's said to be a naturally occurring, formation. It wasn't man-made, but nonetheless was really, really significant to the people here. This is Spanish Hill. We find that right here. Where is that? I'm going to go show you that. It's not right on the Susquehanna. It's just kind of close to it because the Susquehanna is right here. It comes down here. We've got like Spanish Hill is located here. This is the confluence. I don't know what this river is called. The Chemung, maybe that's how it's pronounced, but we're coming down here. And if you're familiar with my work where we talk about Queen Esther, this is all Queen Esther territory. If I am familiar, if I'm accurate, this is, I believe, where the village was, where she was killed. If you're familiar with the musical Hamilton, and maybe I'll go into that because it's really interesting if you go and see, like, you know, how that was sold to the population, and it talks about the Schuyler sisters, and this is big Schuyler town. But this is where Queen Esther lived, right around here, and we see that this goes all the way down to Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. And let's go look at this. You know, this is, where are we? We're like right here, and then it comes all the way down here. Right here is where Scranton and Wilkes-Barre is, where this big turn is, and this is where Spanish Hill is. And like right in the middle here is where we're going to find Standing Stone. Let's see, where do we got Standing Stone? Standing Stone, and Standing Stone is, this is where I guess this is a town right here, but there's an actual stone, you know, right here in the river called Standing Stone, which is another stone. And this is also where French asylum is, which is where there was going to be, this was, you know, for you, New York and New Jersey folks, like Robert Morris, he was like the wealthiest man during the colonial times, which Morris County is named after. He was funding this was going to be built up and was going to be a place for all of the French aristocrats, including Marie Antoinette, to come and live, like, you know, as the French Revolution was starting to heat up. But, you know, we know how that story ended up. But, you know, Marie Antoinette being like this artificial monarch or queen, you know, stone. We find her living right in Queen Esther's own backyard. There's a little bit of, you can read into that. But this is where Standing Stone is. So what's Standing Stone? I did a video this summer. I think it was called Frozen, or Frozen 2 was in the title. And I show you, this is Standing Stone. It's in the river. Here's an old picture of it. Doesn't look that impressive, I suppose, but it was impressive enough that French Asylum is built there. It was very important to all the people who live there. It was very, very significant. Here's some stuff I could find about it, but I go into this, is like how Disney talked about this in the movie Frozen 2 and the songs in Frozen 2, and then how Pocahontas is all about the Susquehanna River as well. And so that might be of interesting, but let me read this. The name Standing Stone was given to this locality by the Indians on account of a very remarkable stone. That's what we're looking at here, which is in the river. This stone from top to the bend of the river, is 44 feet high. It's 16 feet wide and 4 feet thick. Doesn't seem to be 44 feet high. I'm not certain where that comes from. But what I did find interesting, and this was an interesting point. So this is what it says. At ordinary low water, the stone is 22 to 23 feet above the surface of the water. So that makes sense. The lower edge of the stone must penetrate the surface of the earth to a considerable depth in order to be able, as it has, to resist the force of water as the freshets and the ice which the river breaks up suddenly moves with apparently irresistible power. This stone has been a landmark during the history of the county, and the surveys of both the Susquehanna Company and Pennsylvania refer to it. So this here is an article. This was wiped off the internet. I couldn't find this anymore, but this is from the Pennsylvania Department of Geology, and it's a one-pager called Outstanding Geological Features of Pennsylvania, Standing Stone, and French Asylum in Bradford County. And the point I'm just trying to make is, this is recognized from a geological perspective of being very, very unique in an area of very, very unique geology. So now we have another stone. Go see that video if you like the syncromystic stuff, because, it ties in kind of neatly with this, with the Disney film, lost my track for a moment. The Disney film Frozen 2. Sometimes it's hard to do this multiple things at the same time. Okay, so where am I? Let me go back to the map. So here we are with this. We go down French Asylum. We can go see where the river bumps into Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. I've covered all of that in good detail. And then we can see where the river meets right here. That is this location right there. And now we're going to come down to... I want to come down. This is where we're going to talk. This is where we're going. We're going right here. Well, actually, no, I'm going to show you this first. I'm going to show you, because we're talking stones. Here's the Susquehanna River. We're just south of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We could see where the Conestoga River is emptying out into the Susquehanna River right here. This is where Safe Harbor Dam is, and right here we have Big Indian and Little Indian Rock. I've talked about these a lot. These are known as the Susquehanna Petroglyphs. This is the largest selection or collection of rock carvings east of east of the Mississippi. I cover this a lot in Mystic Lancaster Part 1, particularly the connection between these rock carvings and, what that meant to a gentleman by the name of Talakiel. So that is of significance. I would definitely recommend that. And then, so let's go look at this is that portion right here. That's where the petroglyphs are. And then this final stage of the river as it goes into the, and it falls into and then transitions into the Chesapeake Bay. And in there we find something which is called the deeps. This is written in 1916, prior to the construction of the dam and the power plant at McCall's Ferry, Pennsylvania. A careful survey of the river bottom was made by soundings under the direction, blah, blah, blah. The results of the survey so far as they were of scientific interest placed, where is it? Maybe this is what I want to show. Okay, so there are these deeps. They discovered the deeps. That's what that article is about. So that was, I don't think that covered what I was saying. So here's a couple things I want to say. So we're talking about this 40-mile stretch. This gorge has been a barrier to human movement across the river, but it's also an area where passage up and down the river itself was far from easy. For the entire length was a series of rapids, which were called by the rivermen riffles. And so that is this portion right here. That's what it's talking about. And so I'm pointing this out because this is geologically an anomaly of interest. Because of this 40-mile stretch of whitewater, the Susquehanna is unique among American rivers. These rapids show that the river's steepest gradient is near the mouth. Such conditions exist in most of the great African rivers, but they are not found in any other river in the Atlantic seaboard. And then he goes in and talks a little bit about John Smith. And then we talk about this right here. The Susquehanna Gorge has been of much interest to geologists for various reasons. Within its confines, hidden under the river's waters and paralleling its course, are a number of long trenches known as deeps. Several of these penetrate below the sea level. These gash-like openings in the river bottom were discovered when the flow of the river was diverted with the construction of power dams. Holtwood, 1919, Conewago, 1925, and Safe Harbor, 1930. These deeps, so they're these like long cuts. They measure 2 miles in length, 125 feet in depth. So that is, this is like a 9-foot deep river in general. It's a very shallow river. And we can see, though, that these deeps are like 12 times deeper than the river itself and, a couple hundred feet in width. There has, of course, been much speculation concerning the origin of these deeps because they have been excavated in solid rock. Another unique thing about the Susquehanna River. The bottom of it is solid rock, and that's what we're going to get into it. Whereas most workers agree that they were the result of tremendous flow, but the problem is to explain this excess of water. If talking about what's filling in these deeps, where is the excess water coming from? It may be that when the Susquehanna River was channeled from meltwater from the ice sheet, when it was emptying south via the Finger Lakes of New York, such quantities of river pouring seaward through the gorge gouged out the deeps. Some persons, however, maintain that the deeps existed long before any ice age. They attribute the origin of the faulting or cracks in the Earth's crust lying along lines of weakness of which the gorge itself may have a component. Other explanations have not been lacking, so in a sense, the deeps are still one of our state's unsolved geological riddles. This is the point I'm trying to make here. This river and the rocks and the stones, there are mysteries after mysteries after mysteries. No one knows. This is just one example of many, many mysteries. And so as I was talking about before, about breaking down these stories, it's like we look at these from a specific perspective, particularly the geologists. Who else is studying this, right? And they are going to be looking at it from a certain perspective. And we're going to go and start looking at things in a very, very interesting way. That standing stone, which I was talking about, what is so strange about it, it is perfectly perpendicular into the ground. They don't know how it got there. It penetrated so deeply. There is so much power which is generated throughout the breaking of the ice dams of the Susquehanna River, but that stone has never moved. And so that is one of the reasons why it's identified as a geological feature. We're seeing all of these indications of stones and rocks, of having cultural significance for like the French aristocrats, for the Iroquois nations. We see like the Herkimer diamonds. We see like the John Smith and Joseph Smith, you know, all of this sort of stuff. And so all of this is leading up to what I want to show you right now. 39 minutes lead up. You know, I hope you guys stuck around because, you know, you're going to get a nice little treat. So this is what I want to talk about, and this is what all of this is about. This area right here. Look at these guys. Right in the Susquehanna River. So let me read a little about it. They're called the potholes of Conewago Falls. The potholes of Conewago Falls, this is, I don't know when this was written. This comes from the Pennsylvania Academy of Science. Are probably one of America's most extensive displays of deeply bored and sculpted igneous rock in riverbeds. So there's a lot of sculpted rock, but rarely is it igneous rock. These were uncovered during the third week of October 1947, and for the first time in memory of man, when the drought-parched Susquehanna River retreated far below its normal range. Also, I think of let me go here. These potholes at Conewago Falls are not unique in the Susquehanna River. Below the Holtwood Dam, so that's where the petroglyphs are, in Drunmore Township, Lancaster County, and on the islands there, for a distance of about 4 miles, are scattered potholes. They're calling the potholes like the holes that are in these rocks, and we're going to look at them really close. Bored in the chlorite schist. I don't know. I know there's a way to pronounce it. I wish I knew how to pronounce words. You know, I make these videos and you'd think I know how to pronounce something. Some of these attain to 10-foot diameters. Up the river in Wilkes-Barre, there are even larger ones. But here's what I wanted to get at. But the Conewago Fall pothole formations differ from the others in Pennsylvania by the greater hardness of the rocks in which the borings and carvings are made. Diabase being one of the most resistant of all rocks. So when we see this is in like the hardest rock that's out there. This is another one of these mysteries. Like they have kind of an explanation. We're going to go into some of these, like what they are saying are the mysteries, and I'm going to show you some other mysteries in a moment, but like the carvings, what carved these rocks? Okay, where were we with this? And I also want to go here. The features of Conewago were thought to have formed when the Susquehanna was full of sediment and water from melting glaciers in the north. Evidence of the extraordinary flow velocities of these meltwaters is the precedence of obviously moved large blocks of diabase. So another one of these, of the mystery, and what we're going to get at, is like, how did these rocks get here? Because they're not from this area. What moved them to this area? I've got other articles. Here's the bottom line, is like, yeah, a lot of people think that it was from these flow, but no, that's not an agreed upon conclusion. And the main reason why it's not agreed upon is that the amount of flow, the flood that would have happened to have moved these immensely heavy rocks, like some of them are as much as 150 tons, is like the entire landscape would show signs of this type of flood, and there is no sort of indication that that has happened elsewhere in the landscape. Let me go back, where was I reading? Some are truck size, weighing more than 100 tons. Extreme flows may have had their origin. So they're saying may have had their origin in the glacial lakes. So again, like that makes the most amount of sense, but that's not, there's so many mysteries around this area. So where are we talking about? Let's go look at like where we have been talking about this area. And this is one of the reasons why it's so interesting. Look right here. This is 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island. You know, 3 Mile Island is a major part of the Susquehanna story. It is a, it's a psyop, in my opinion. It didn't really happen. It was a psyop along the same lines of like 9/11, the Kennedy assassination, what's going on right now. But this happened right there. And then right here, these are the rocks we're talking about. These are the potholes right here, Conewago Falls. These are them. Okay, and it's just, what is this? There's 3 Mile Island. This is where they are. They are, you know, right to the actual nuclear power plant is 1.8 miles, you know, less than 2 miles away. So let's go in and we look at it. So the mysteries, you know, from a geological perspective, which they talk about, is how did they get there? What would have shaped, first of all, like, they're potholes which are found. That's what these things are called. These are called potholes. They're found in rocks, you know, throughout Earth. And it's assumed that it's like vortexes within the water with like with small stones, what have you, and they carve this out. And this has never been like demonstrated. This is just like, you know, the most the logical deduction, and it seems to be agreed upon by geologists. But the overwhelming majority of where this happens, or where they say that happens, is in a much, much softer stone. And so this stone here is not, this is a very, very different beast. So that's one of the first thing that's happened. Where was I here? So I want to talk about this. This large block of diabase has been overturned, presumably rolling. So one of the other things is there are two places where these rocks could have come from. One is local, but then it seems the majority are about 5 miles or upstream. So it's thought of that either like a flood brought them down, or possibly like they were encased in a glacier. This is like the mainstream sort of theories as to why it would happen. And the glacier brought it down and melted. And here they're showing that this one is upside down. This rock has been overturned, presumably by rolling. This is evidenced by the fact that the potholes are upside down. And so the author of this particular paper is trying to indicate that it's that these rocks have been moved, like, you know, where the potholes happened originally, and then they've been moved since the potholes have occurred, because now it's upside down. And then this is what he says. He's like, we don't know when the picture was taken, but he's assuming in the early 20th century based upon the clothing. And then he says, of considerable importance is the fact that recent examination indicates that the smaller boulders, so they've identified this particular boulder, because it's not a big area, it's only like 3/4 of a mile squared, that the smaller boulders along the base of this block have not been moved since the photograph was taken in like the early 20th century. And so that says since then, 2 record floods on the Susquehanna River, one in 1936 and one in 1972. So these are major, major floods have happened. And so he's saying that had no effect on these small ones. Like, if those floods didn't even move the small boulders, these guys right here, what sort of flood would have moved this? And the author of this particular paper does not buy that there was a major flood that moved these rocks, because, you know, there's no evidence to suggest that. He's open to the idea of it being glacial, but like what I'm trying to suggest, you know, the story which I'm looking at is like this entire river, whatever a river may be. That's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, I don't know what anthracite is, I don't know what all this stuff is, but there's something very, very unusual happening on this river. And what even is a river? So let's continue back along our journey here. This one here, we've got this rock. It's telling the size. This one he figures out to be about 156 tons. But now, now I'm going to show you my stuff. You know, for those who've stuck around for 48 minutes, now you're going to get your payoff. I was out there this weekend. These are the things which I find unusual. The first thing is there are places on these stones where it has a texture and a patina unlike anything I've seen. The second thing is there are lines. There are lines in these stones which are perfectly straight. Perfectly straight. Hundreds of these lines in these stones that are perfectly straight, and they are in them, like, you know, they're normal fissures, they're normal cracks, but then these appear to be something else. And then the lastly is there are what appear to be core sample drillings. I'm assuming they probably came recently, you know, maybe someone was doing it, but like, I don't know. So I'm going to go and show you all of this stuff. So let's start here. I want you to look at this picture. I took this weekend. Look at this. Look at the texture of this stone. This looks more like bronze. This is some of the hardest, smoothest, slickest, most like it feels good to touch. Look at this line right here. This looks like it's the shape of something, right? You know, like something else. This does not look like stone, or it doesn't to me. In fact, I would even go so far, at least I'm open to the idea, that it appears that there is this outer like coating, and we can see in places where it looks like this coating breaks off, and you can see this you could see this other layer beneath it. Here's some of these holes. These are 3 different places where I found these holes. They're all the same hole. That's why I think it's drilled. They're the same size. They go in maybe about 4 or 5 inches. This is so hard. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine about this. They suggested there are other borings, like, you know, in places in Peru and Egypt. Maybe these are the same. I don't know. We could see these. We've got more of this, you know, looking at this texture. Like, most of the stones are covered with like dirt, but where the dirt is not visible, you can see this. And now we're looking at these lines. Look at these lines here. See some examples right there. More of the lines. I've got some videos here. Lines. If you look closely here, do you see these lines? How it goes up and over here. They're all parallel, and the parallel continues over the curves. Look at these lines right here. They're all over the place. See the lines right there. This is what it looks like right now. They're like these pools. Kind of, here's some more of the lines. Look at this, like just like the coloration which we have right here of some of these stones, which are not like matted down with the dirt. There's some more pictures. Now I've got some videos here. Let me go show you some of my videos. See the line? It goes there. It continues on this rock right here. The same line. It's in the same trajectory. Continues all the way down here. Perfectly straight. Perfectly straight lines. Look at them. You see them? They're right there. Where are these lines? Who made these lines? What are these lines? Like the lines continue here. What is this place? See this one? All right, let's see if we can follow this line. Back it up a little bit. You see the line. It goes all the way down, that straight line. You can see it going underwater. I think this is a good one. Let's see if, watch this again. All right, let's see if we can follow this line. Back it up a little bit. You see the line. It goes all the way down. Right here. Straight line. You see, and then it's right here. You see it underwater right there? Right there. All right, and then let's go to this video right here. More lines. All right, let's look more at these lines. Like, look at them right here. Just look at it. can't scratch it off. Look how it just continues. That same line. Look at these holes. Lines right here. Look at those two lines. Look at the lines over there. Do you see the lines all over there? Perfectly straight. What are these lines? Look at the patina. Can you see the shine? The shine of what this looks like? This looks more like metal. Do you see how that shines like metal? It's so smooth. What was this place? I mean, they're very strange places all over, but we're 1 mile downstream from 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island was a scam. Nothing happened at 3 Mile Island. It was a scam. If you go do your history, you go and you read about like the lack of radiation poisoning. Nothing happened at 3 Mile Island. It was a psyche. It was a psyop. It was a psyop, and it happened right here, right upstream, right up there. That's where 3 Mile Island is. All right. So I kind of want to like wrap it up right now. This is a location which there are 2 points of this video. Is like I really want to go and with everything which is going on right now, question everything. I'm going to show you this one last thing because it's just nuts. I'm not. I was going to show you like right down the road is a place where GlaxoSmithKline is supposedly going to make some of the vaccines which are coming, but the point of sharing all of this is really to begin to like look deeper, in a very tangible way of, the stories that have been hidden from us. I'm particularly connected to the Susquehanna River, and there are other places. I think we all are connected because it is been connected to modern culture. My understanding, the story I tell myself is that flowing water is the connection with flowing life. We are water beings, just like we're story beings, we're also water beings. And water is, you've heard this 1,000 times, water is life, and the flowing of water is the flowing of life. And so when you work with water in a ritualistic way, you're talking about the flow of life, the destiny of life. And then every flowing water system has its own quality. When you go to the oldest river and you've got a river which seems like, I look at that place which I just showed you, the Conewago Falls, I'm like right next to Tiamat, all of this sort of like really, really bizarre synchromystic stuff. I'm like, something happened there. Something happened there a long, long time ago. Here's a little stone I have from the area. I carry the stone with me. I have stones from all of these places. Look at this right here. Look at this piece. This is just a piece of serpentine, which found from right around this area, like probably about 20 miles away, but still within the Susquehanna River area. Being connected to that, being grounded into something a little bit deeper is, I think, of great significance at this particular time. As I said before, this is one way, like this is a guidebook. If you want to go and see these places, if you live, this is all like 90 minutes from Baltimore, 90 minutes from Philly, 2 hours, 2.5 hours from New York. Like it's in that location, like it's an easy day trip. And then also like, if you're not, you can't go there. Like this was designed in order to be used as almost like a tool with active imagination. This right here is Conewago Falls. Like, it's like a cartoon so that you can actively project your mind and have a connection to this sort of area. The same way, like, same techniques which are always being used on us by Disney and like the mainstream entertainment industrial complex. We can use those techniques too. So like this is a way of connecting to this area in a way that is conscious, because you're already connected to it if you're using a computer. So, that's part of the reason I want to share this story. I also want to say, I'll give you one last story. Whenever I go there, I feel weird. I feel really unsettled. When I walk on those stones, I don't feel settled in my footsteps. I normally feel settled in my body, but I don't feel settled there. One time, and here's the thing: it's surrounded by 3 different power plants. There's 3 Mile Island, which is upstream, but there are 2 more power plants in line of sight. You can see them. And one time I was there, and one of the power plants, an alarm started going off, and helicopters started flying around, and I got really paranoid. This about 4 years ago. And getting paranoid is not my typical response. I had a very atypical response for something which seemingly should not have sent me down that path. But what I'm trying to indicate is there was some part of me which does not feel totally at ease there. I'm very drawn there. I've been there many, many times, but it's a powerful spot. So, that's it, my friends. Long tour. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope that this was inspired you to want to, if you can come out and check out this place, go ahead and do that. To go and look at your own surroundings. To move out of some of the top line stories which are being pushed out to the masses right now. And, this is a mystery, and this is a really mysterious time, and, let's have some fun with it. Take care, and until the next time, this is Mike.